Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Benelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started. All right, I'm excited to have this conversation with today's guest. As you'll see, he's a true believer in investing in people to help them master their craft and achieve the highest levels of success possible. He spent his entire career in technology and in the B2B SaaS arena as an operator in numerous go-to-market roles. He's currently the Chief Operating Officer at TeamSnap. Brian Caulfield, welcome to the show.
Hi, Matt. Pleasure to be here.
All right. So this podcast is named Coach2Scale. Our mission is to build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that the coaching and developing of people is key to the growth and success of the individual, the team, the company, and the business as a whole. We'll invite guests who share that belief and who are willing to share their point of view, experiences, lessons learned along the way. With that, let me toss a question over to you, Brian, about coaching.
Okay.
Simply stated, why is coaching so important to the success of the company?
You know, Matt, there's really two reasons, I think, when it comes down to it, and they're very closely related to each other. You know, early lesson I learned in my career was the biggest hurdle to hitting objectives, whether it's a releasing product or it's hitting a quota, is attrition, right? If you don't have butts in seats, as they said, it's really hard to win, right? And it doesn't matter, right? Sales, marketing, engineering, if you don't have good people, you're not going to hit your goal, right? And second, really, was kind of based on my experience in different leadership roles over almost 28 years now, I think. Right?
Believe that? 20.
Yeah, scary, right? But I found that employees fall into three buckets, right? You know, and it's quite simple. There's an A player, B player, and a C player. And again, across any role, it's fairly easy to identify them, right? The A players are the rock stars, right? In sales, we call them the Eagles. You know, really coaching for them, right, is about, sometimes it's as simple as removing roadblocks, removing frustrations, looking the other way because they're doing it not quite as you would want them to. But the end result is they're just good at what they do and they deliver great results all the time. Hardest thing is finding them, right? It's really hard to find them and keep them, right? And probably hard to find them, but ways to keep them, right? On the other end is the C players, right? And, you know, the C players are, you know, again, they're pretty easy to identify. They're all talk, no action. Lots of excuses, finger pointing, right? Any leader can really, in my opinion, we can identify and move those employees out as soon as possible. That's, you know, interviewing is not a perfect art or science. You make mistakes. You have to acknowledge it quickly. And it's usually better for everybody when you part ways. It's the B player that I think coaching is so critical for, right? You know, and that's where, you know, the B player is the bulk of my employee base, right? You know, in a lot of ways, right? And the goal is, how do you turn them into an A player, or the closest thing to an A player they can be, right? Through effective coaching. You know, I look for things like curiosity, competitiveness, work ethic. They can work well with others, right? Those are the people who are like, you know what, let's invest in this person because they've got the core, right? Personality traits and behavioral traits that they can be a successful, productive member of your team, right? You just got to invest in them, right? You got to coach them. You got to develop them, right? In my sales career, it was, you know, I'm a big believer in Sandler sales methodology, right? It gave a great foundation for anybody breaking into sales. You know, it was humbling to learn that, you know, it wasn't just art. There was some science and technique to selling, right? And if you could learn it, practice it, use it, right? Your odds are you are going to make your people better, right? I would say, the other pieces are giving people tools, right? We're very prescriptive with sales books. We give sales playbooks, right? We give lots of content. We drive campaigns and programs. We have, you know, training. I invest heavily in sales enablement roles, right? As much as a sales manager, having somebody to train and coach and develop, the team on a regular basis, right? How one helps develop that employee, right? Internet player, but it also goes a long way with just retaining, right? If they feel invested in, if they feel they're learning something every day, they're going to stay with you, right? And you just continue to improve them and make them better. And hopefully you can have a lower attrition, right? And help me hit my goals for the company.
So if I'm paraphrasing your great response, it's the two things, one begets the other. So if you find out who your eagles are, how to coach them, let them fly, and then provide a little bit of direction and process to that, but then also find out, that bulk of the organization, that movable middle, who are the folks that are competitive, that are coachable, right? And invest in them and help move them up to the right. That's going to lead the organization to success. So with that said, is coaching, is this a top down effect, or does the impact and effect flow bottom up in your opinion?
I think you need both, right? If you don't have a leadership team that believes in coaching, right, and that isn't willing to make the investments, right, spend a couple $100,000 a year for training programs, for coaching programs and tools, then you're not gonna have the ability for it to be a bottoms up approach. But coaching doesn't work unless they want to be coached, right? If they don't embrace it, if they don't use it, if it's not reinforced, right? So if you don't find the right people that will embrace the coaching, right, and want to get better, again, those are the ones that typically fall off and evolve to a C player. And what do you do? But I always say to my team, like, I can give you the framework. This generation is eager for rapid career advancement, rapid financial improvement, right? And I say this: you can't, just because you want to get experience faster doesn't mean experience is going to come to you faster. It still takes time.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you have to show them a path and make those investments for them to, to be successful, but they also going to want it. If they don't want it, right, you can give them a development plan, you can give them a career path, you can tell them what it's going to take. I guarantee in 6 months, you haven't heard from that rep once, right? It's just not in them as a person.
And in your opinion, where do companies get this wrong, this whole approach to coaching?
I think sometimes it's just a financial decision, right? Some of the I've been lucky, I think, in my career. I've always been in companies that believed in it and leadership teams that believed in developing their employees. And it's actually one of the things I look at the most when I've considered a move, right? Is, right now my company's owned by a private equity firm, and, I interviewed them as much as they interviewed me about, their willingness to invest in my model, right? Because my model requires, to be successful, some investments are made, and we're going to spend some money on trainers. We're going to spend some money on managers. We're going to have the right tools and software. And so if the leadership doesn't believe in it, there's no sense in me going, because my model is not going to work without the right investments.
And you're purposeful about that. Maybe that was ingrained in you from day one. I suspect that is something that evolved over time. Would that be a fair statement?
Fair statement. Yeah. I think the light bulbs went on when I was with you in our Oracle days, right? Early on, right? It was the one thing I realized: Oracle invested so much in training us, right? It's like almost probably to a fault, because I think I went through every major sales training methodology in the course of my 5 years there, right? Yeah. But the one that stuck was Sandler, because of the reinforcement, right? It was just constantly reinforced. It was embedded in everything that we did. And to me, I took Sandler with me on the rest of my career journey, right? Because I saw how it addressed the biggest challenge was attrition, right? It did a great job of developing people, making them feel invested in. And each time I moved to a different company, I probably became better and more passionate about the importance of coaching and training and development, and again, it becomes now part of my terms, right? Of like, if I'm going to leave and go join a new company, which I don't do that often. My last company I was with for 10 years, right? But when I'm going to go, I need to be successful. So the terms are, here's what you're going to have to do if you want me to come help build your sales organization or your revenue operations or whatever it might be, because I've made a lot of mistakes and I know it doesn't work,
Well, you talked about the investment that the company at this point, this was Oracle way back when, made in you, and you took it with you for the last 20 plus years. Are you seeing more people come in, people earlier in their career that are asking, what is the company going to do in terms of helping me become a better salesperson or whatever role that you're interviewing for? Like, how's the company going to invest in me? I'm going to give you everything I got, but almost like, how are you going to help me grow? Are you seeing that?
Sometimes, but most of the time when somebody is doing that, it's a very selfish ask, in my opinion, right? And it's transparent that it's like, it's almost a red flag, right? To me, like, this person's going to be restless in 6 months. And, the first recruiter that calls them and offers them a couple $1,000s more in base, they're going to jump. Right. And so when it's genuine, yes. Right. And I think it just comes down to, the traits that this person, portrays. One of my favorite interview questions, right, to help filter through it is, tell me about your first job. Right. And, most of the time somebody will start talking about their first job out of college, right? And when I hear somebody starts talking to me about their first paper route, right, or they worked in a fast food chain, right, they were mowed lawns around the neighborhood, right? To me, that shows somebody who is willing to put in the work, right, to get good, to be successful, right? And when they are asking me, then what are you guys going to do? How do you develop me? It comes from a point of being humble and saying, I'm not good. I'm applying and I don't know this craft, but if you teach me, I'm going to do everything I can to be the best.
So it's like anything else in this profession. It's a lot of it's how you ask the question and how you come across when asking that question. Yeah. If you're being interviewed. So
exactly.
You touched on a few things about kind of where companies may not invest or get it wrong or however you want to phrase it. One of them is a financial decision, but you touched on something else. One is that coaching's the long game, right? It's not immediate. You don't see the types of revenue results that the C-suite or the board wants to see. So because it's the long game, and with all the pressures on leaders today, why is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yes, it all comes right to the simple ROI question, right? What's the return on that investment, right? An employee is probably the most critical investment we make, right? It's the highest, line item on the balance sheet, right? And, you want to hire really good people that are going to be with you for, it's hard to say, you're going to somebody to be with you for 10 years or spend their career. That really doesn't happen much anymore, right? But my view is, if I can get somebody for 3 to 5 years, right, that's a good tenure, right? And a good return on investment for us hiring, training, and developing them, right? And that's not easy to do, right? If you look at most resumes, coming across now, it's the big red flag, I'm sure to you and to me, right, is, somebody who's jumped every year or two, you can do it once or twice, but after that, it's like, I'm not even going to call you in for an interview if you've got that many jobs and you're 30 years old, right? So, it is a win-win, right? Hopefully for the employee, right? Like they want to stay, they want to get experience, they're increasing their market value, and they do become more attractive to, the next employer when you've shown longevity, when you've shown career progression. You've gone from being in a, entry level job to now you're a manager or director and you have bigger responsibilities, and you've been promoted multiple times within that company. To me, that's the sign of a strong employee. I want to get on my team, right? Not
Right.
the person who's just been jumping every year.
Right. And you just mentioned it, which is a great segue to the next question. You mentioned win-win. And in the past, you've said to me that coaching really in order for that investment of time and energy and resources and capital to be worth it on both sides, the coaching needs to be win-win. Can you expand on that just a little bit more?
Yeah. I mean, so there's the selfish side of it, right? Which is I need them to be better to hit my number, right? And I need them to be more effective, right? And to hit my number. But at the end of the day, if they're not getting personal growth out of it as well, right? If they're not feeling like they're learning a skill, right? If they're not getting better, if they're not opening up their future potentials, right? They don't embrace it, right? So we don't just do sales training, right? We don't just do Sandler, right? We put together a training curriculum that will look at how do we help some people with time management, right? How do we help you with communication, writing skills, right? Sometimes it might be how do you advance Excel, courses, right? For the right, we also give all of our employees get an educational stipend we encourage them to use for outside of TeamSnap, right? Go take a leadership course at their local college, right? Or we want them to also drive and get skills, professional skills that aren't just self-serving for our objective, right? Which is we gotta hit our revenue targets, right? If we don't throw in and help develop them as the whole person, anybody's going to give you sales training, right? We gotta offer more.
So, you just made me think of something. So it sounds like the company, and if TeamSnap doesn't do it, some companies do it that you've worked in the past, where they provide some sort of investment or stipend for the individuals to go out and get some education, to take a class, whether it's advanced Excel or leadership or improving in some area. As a leader, do you look at that when interviewing someone for promotion within the organization? How have they, taken whatever was available to them to further invest in themselves?
Absolutely, right? It's like if they're not investing in themselves, I always say, why am I investing in you, right? If that's the challenge, right? It's like they've got to want it for themselves. They've got to have that personal drive, right? They've got to have the desire to do more, to take on more, and then build their skill set as we help build their skill set, right? We don't. It's hard. Some companies, it's an unfortunate financial reality, right? Like when I got my master's degree years and years ago, the company I worked for paid for 70% of it, right? And I did it at nights and weekends, and it was a hard 3 years, right? But it was very inexpensive for me the way it worked out. They were a very profitable company, at the time, and they could offer those types of benefits. Nowadays, when you go into since the VC companies entered and technology exploded, VC venture capitalists usually don't care about the employee, right? And they say they do, but my experience has been the VC really doesn't care. It's about the bottom line in the investment, and they don't want to give extra money for employee development, right? They're in these early, stage companies that are, $1 million to $10 million in revenue. I tell my son, that's not where you're going to go. You're not going to win. You got to have a company that's going to want to invest. They're going to have the funds, right? They have to be profitable, right? In some ways, employees, you got to look for the right company if you're looking to get those investments, right? Because the company has to have the money to do it, and they have to have the ownership, the leadership belief that it's worth doing, right? That it's a critical value, right, to the company. Because if not, then honestly, you're not going to get the coaching and development you need.
Yeah. A lot of the coaching and developing that, I'm observing these days is centered around the deal. And, frontline managers and oftentimes the entire leadership chain of command can be myopically focused on the deal. What would you say to managers who over-index on that and are too focused on deals?
Yeah, so the manager who's the super rep, right? They don't have faith in their people to be able to manage and progress and close the deal. So they feel like they have to micromanage the deal, right? And therefore micromanage the rep, right? And a part of it, I think, is they don't know how to make the investment in people, and they're not, confident, right, in letting go, right, and letting somebody fail. They can't afford to lose a deal, right, because I'm going to get fired. Versus sometimes when you lose the deal, the best lessons are learned, right, for both the manager and the rep. So, I agree that a lot of managers over-index on the deal, right, and they don't stop and think, why is a deal stuck at this place, right? Or what's the core behavior that hasn't happened, right? What's the action they didn't take, right? Have you role played with the rep, getting how to get it unstuck, right? Have you, had them, spend some time with the Eagle rep and say, hey, he's stuck in all these places. This is what keeps happening. How do you overcome them, right? It's like, so, it's not, the good thing about sales is it's usually everybody's willing to help out, right? Everyone's willing to, a good eagle's willing to share and brag about their successes. So you can get them to, open up and share that with the younger, less, and they can see that, again, like that eagle isn't just an eagle because they're good, but they also work hard at being good, right? And they have the techniques. They've faced all the challenges that the young rep is facing, right? But they've just tried and failed and figured out how to, overcome that objection, right? And that's why they always win, right? And so a lot of it is just, bringing people together, and helping managers see that, you got to develop the person. You can't just develop the deal.
And that creates scale, right? I think is a big part of what you're saying. And I hear a lot the eagles who get to share what they've learned and what's made them successful. They get energy from that, which prompts them to stay longer in the organization, right? So it's it helps everybody. The rising tide lifts all boats, as they say. Hey, so Brian, let's pivot a little bit. Let's learn a little bit more about you. Let's learn more about Brian Caulfield. What you have strong opinions. You have strong processes. I think you haven't been to a lot of companies, but the ones that you have taken your leadership skills to, you've left it in a better place than when you joined it, which is a hallmark of a great leader. What's shaped your value system and your what did you learn along the way?
Yeah, so thank you for that. For me, it started with just thinking about, honestly, I was so maniacally focused on my career, that I probably let some personal things go untouched for years. When I started to have a family, I realized I need to be successful, right? I carried this burden, like I'm sure you and many other parents, like it's like, okay, this isn't just about me anymore. I got to figure out how I, can feed 3 kids and, have 2 cars and go on a vacation and prepare for college. And that and that was my motivator. My family and being a good provider was really the thing that kept me going when things sometimes felt hopeless or felt like I wasn't progressing. I felt like I wasn't earning as much as I should, right? That to me, everybody needs that. There's some motivator that really drives you, right? And I learned that in my early 30s when I started a family, and it's has remained the number one thing that drives me today, right? And so, when what I've learned along the years though is, I've definitely softened, right? People that have known me, throughout my career, I have it can be my wife would say a curmudgeon at times, right? I am opinionated. I have strong beliefs. I have a strong work ethic. I expect that of everyone around me, and I get frustrated when, the people around me don't care as much as I do and aren't working like I am. I've learned to soften my approach and adjust it, right, to with my teams and the different companies. But I firmly believe at this point in my career, the things I'm most proud of are the people I've developed, the people that have worked for me, the people that have gone on to be, executives on their own right in their own companies, right? That to me, the proof of my value is some of them, right? And some that are more successful than I am today, right? And that to me, that's the reward, right? At some point in your career, you realize it's about the people, right? It's about, you're working with everyone 10 hours a day, right? Back in the days when we used to all be in an office, right? It was your family when you weren't with your family, right? And I don't think I appreciated that earlier on in my career. Today, it's critical to me. It's like, I don't want to work with a bunch of assholes, right? I want to work with good people who care, have the same values, right? Have the same work ethic, are achieving, working towards the same goals, right? To me, that's what drives me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you and I came from a similar place where the mantra was always, yeah, how do you make money, grow professionally, and have fun, being around like-minded people who had, cared as much as you did and wanted to make a difference. So with that being said, what drew you to TeamSnap? And what does TeamSnap do?
The people. Yeah. Yes, at TeamSnap, we're not too dissimilar from you. We are focused on coaches, right? We just focus on coaches in youth sports. It's been around for about 12, 13 years. About 25 million people on our platform, everything from coaches, parents, fans that are trying to optimize their experiences around youth sports, right? I joined about 2.5 years ago. After an almost 10-year stint. And that 10-year stint had 3 successful exits. But it was time for me to try something new. But honestly, I was waiting on the bench to see, there were a couple really, really strong leaders and colleagues that I knew I was going to go work with them again. Right. And so I got a call 2.5 years ago from our current CEO, Peter Francois. He said, "Hey, we're thinking about," he'd gone to a private equity firm. "We're thinking about buying up an asset in the youth sports market. Are you interested?" And it was a no-brainer because, we have somebody on our board who was my boss for 9 years. I was able to bring with me a couple of really talented leaders, right? And we amassed a really, really strong team, right? We also, we've hired since, and we had retained a couple of really, really strong leaders, right? And I feel now the thing that is lead to our success is we have a really strong leadership team, right? That really enjoy working together and work really well together. We share the same values. We're growing double digits year over year. We've got, and so it's been one of the best decisions I've made in my career because I get to bring my business experience and acumen to an industry that, is my personal passion, right? My 3 kids, all athletes, played at competitive levels. And so I've been a user of TeamSnap as a parent for a decade, right? And all the competitive products out there. I was like, shit, if I could bring to this industry the discipline that SaaS has and that I learned at places like Oracle, right? And bring a real professional sell-in model and go-to-market operations, right? There's a real chance we could knock this thing out of the park, and so far we have, right?
And combining passions too, right? Combining passions
Yeah.
that you have, and that's fantastic. And one of the themes that has emerged here in this conversation, I think, is that people come to work for their reasons, not the company's reasons. And to the extent that the manager or the coach can tap into what's important, right? For you, it was your family very specifically, but it might not have been 10 years prior, to when you started the family. Like, you had different priorities at that time. And so how does the manager tap into that? One of the things that I remember from a recent conversation with you, you said something along the lines of, hey, I'm happy when we have to pay out a ton of money in commissions.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember saying that, but my sense is it wasn't the first time you said it. What are you thinking there? Because I don't know that there's a lot of salespeople that'll listen to this and say, I'm not sure that the companies that I've worked for always want to pay a ton of money in commissions.
Well, then they're working for the wrong company, right? If, the leadership team isn't excited when the top paid employee is a sales rep, right? I mean, that to me is something, we should all strive for, right? That means you've got a really good product, you've got a really good customer base, right? Everything is working well, right? If you have a sales rep doing 200% of their number, crushing, their quota and paying out, it's a win-win for the company. It's not like we're losing money in that situation, right? I mean, we go through a very specific financial planning process every year, right? We model out, what percentage is going to hit quota, what isn't, who might overachieve, right? So we've planned for it, right, to a certain degree, and it sends a great message to the rest of the employees. It's like, here's what's possible, right? Celebrate, right, that this person, we don't probably not smart to say, oh, this person just, made $1 million, right? Selling, right? But, when you see people that make that kind of money, right, selling, you kind of wanted to get out. So people see what's possible, right? You watch that person, they're the best at what they do. There's no, it's no accident that they're making that money, right? And as a company, great. You've over-delivered for us, right? You've proven our value proposition time and time again into the market, right? I have no problem celebrating that and paying you as much as you've earned.
That's awesome. Hey, so curious your perspective on this. Let's just say a sales employee comes to work in your company. They kick ass for 3-4 years, right? They do everything that was asked of them. They go above and beyond. They were that B to A, person. Nobody wants them to leave, but they did end up leaving. They ended up leaving the right way. They gave notice, and they took on some much bigger role than was available to them potentially at your company at that time. What is the manager? What should the manager do? What's the message to the rest of the team when that happens?
So if they're really that good, and eventually you're going to lose the good ones, the most important message I give that employee is know that you're welcome back, right? If it doesn't work out, I get it. You've been with us. You got to try something bigger. We're sad to lose you, right? You're great value. If it's not what you expected it to be in 6 months, call me, right? We'd welcome you back open arms, right? And that happens a lot, right? Especially, with some earlier in their career folks, like, the grass isn't always greener. Then they realize how good they have it. They come back, and you're going to get 20% more productivity out of that person, right? Because now they're in a place they know, they're loved, they're trusted, they're respected, they're compensated fairly. That's the hardest part for a manager, though. Is like, I think managers are embarrassed by attrition. I think there were points in my early career I felt like I was, right? Like, shit, I failed when somebody quit, and, it took me a while to accept that that's just part of the profession, right? People are going to leave you eventually, right? And the good ones, you got to let them go and wish them luck and hopefully maybe they come back better, right? And not take it personally, right? Sometimes, like I said, hiring is hard, right? Finding the really strong people can interview, especially salespeople. They can interview really well, right? It may take you 3 months to figure out that they, they tricked you, right?
Yeah.
But you're going to make mistakes, right? And don't hang on to them. Sometimes you got to push them out, right? Yeah, that's a tough one for the manager, I think.
Tough one indeed. And what's the message by the manager to the team that's still there, right? Because I mean, look, you could two ways, right? You could, good for this person. They did everything here. They did all the right things, and now they're spreading their wings. It's a positive message, or they're persona
absolutely
non grata,
positive, right?
the other way.
Yeah, if it's a good employee, it's been around. I just you can't speak poorly of them, right? You have to, respect it, right? And you have to acknowledge the team, like this sucks. We don't want to lose this person, right? But they've worked hard. They've earned the chance to go try something different if they want to, and I'm just going to support them, right? And take it as a very positive thing, right? Usually the ones that are leaving and suck, the team already knows they suck, right? The employees know before I know sometimes when somebody's just not living up to the expectation of the role, right? And it frustrates the employees, right, that they're still here. So those ones you don't really have to talk much about. Most of the time they get it. The person left because they didn't fit,
Well, so maybe story time a little bit here. I don't want to put any pressure on you, but you have these deeply rooted beliefs. You are a big believer in coaching and investing in people. You've demonstrated that for years in your successful career. Most of the time, it just doesn't fall out of the sky. You don't inherit it. It was modeled to you. If so, tell us about a time where you were the benefactor, the recipient of some great coaching.
Yeah, there's been a couple. As I thought about coaching in anticipation of this conversation, like, God, started running through my Rolodex in my head and thinking of all these great people over the years that maybe you didn't realize how impactful they were. I would go back. The earliest on was a gentleman, Richard Farlow, that I worked with my first job out of college. He was a seasoned sales executive. What he taught me that I didn't realize a few years after was kind of the importance of planning, data, being prepared. It was like, he taught me that winning the sales happens before the pitch to the customer, right? And if you're not prepared, if you don't know who you're going to sell to, what you're trying to sell, if you haven't thought through and role played, right, that meeting, it's probably not going to go well, right? And so he was all about the preparation, analyzing the customer and making sure we had our aces lined up to win before we even engage the customer sometimes, right? And then, probably the most influential was my gentleman, Lee Fuleri, who was my boss for 9 years at the company Intralinks I was at last. He was I've always reached out for mentors and looked for advice from executives. He was the person that, I had been going through 3-4 years. I'd churn, build up a sales model for a company, get it running, and then go do it again, because that's what interested me, right, for about 10 years. And then I realized that was no longer that challenging or interesting for me, that I wanted to learn more about running the business, right? And I had these conversations with him and I told him what I was thinking about. And he was great in saying, here's what I think you could do really well. Here's what I think you should stay away from. And when opportunities came up for me to take on different parts of the business, he was willing to give me that chance, right? And made a lot of mistakes and didn't all go as perfectly planned, but he was always supportive and coaching and, willing to talk through the good and the bad, right? And help me formulate my career path, right? And that turned into, my first COO role, right? Of a $400 million software company with a global footprint, right? I did some really cool stuff. I built a massive operations center in Hyderabad, India from scratch, right? To provide 24/7 services. I traveled the world, participating in different cultures and building sales and operations in 5 continents, right? And so, he gave me those opportunities, right? And he coached me along the way, right? When it was what I was going to be good at, what I wasn't, let me try and fail, and ultimately coached me towards the success I have today.
All right. Well, the importance of mentors, I think you agree, can't be understated. So curious, it's been a while. I remember years and years ago, we got on the road bikes, and did the Pan Mass Challenge and raised money for cancer research.
I think I wiped you out on a road trip once, right?
Yeah, I was going to say what I remember that is I remember falling. I was just getting used to those clipped-in pedals back in the day. I don't know that I'm used to them now, but I remember falling several times. One of them at your hand. So thanks for that. Knocked some sense into me.
Sorry.
What are you doing?
Sorry,
what are you doing for? That's all right. What are you doing for fun outside of work these days?
Weirdly, I spent most of the last decade or so with my kids. My kids are athletes, coaching them, baseball, basketball, cheering them on, driving to tournaments, spend a lot of time with them. And as they're getting older, they get their licenses. I don't need to drive them. I have too much time. And when I was younger, I loved playing golf. This summer, I've gotten back into it and playing a lot of golf. And actually, my son just graduated from high school. He's going off to college at the end of August, but he picked up golf as well this summer and is obsessed with it. So he and I have been playing a lot. That's kind of my fun, right? The summer, we'll see. In winter time, I like to get out and ski. Having grown up in the mountains in New Hampshire, they always call back to me to get back up there and ski and stuff. So that's, my 2 daughters keep me pretty busy. They're 3 kids it's a lot, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that fun in and of itself. Different types of fun at times, right? Sometimes it's type 2 fun instead of type 1 fun, but I can relate. So, look, any final thoughts, Brian, for those leaders out there that are grinding out every day, grinding it out, trying to figure out how to be that best coach, how to make an impact on the business, how to make an impact on others?
Yeah, I think that what took me too long to learn in my career is, you're only as good as the people around you, right? Like even today, like I have the best leadership team I've ever had and ever worked with, right? It makes my job so much easier. Gives me the ability to focus, right, on different, more strategic aspects of our business, and that's intentional, right? Intentionally find good people you work with, develop them, invest in them, bring them with you, right? When it's time to take on a new adventure, right? It's really, really hard to hire good all the time, right? You get somebody good, keep them close, invest in them, train them, trust them, right? Let them make mistakes, let them learn, right? And that's the key, right? I wish I knew it early in my career, right? There was a selfishness, I think, to everybody when they're young and trying to break in, and, a competitiveness that says, I'm going to be better than that person. I'm going to, destroy them. The reality is success comes from being around good people, right? Learning from the best, playing with the best, lifelong relationships I've had, with people that I would go to battle with any day. Right. But a long, long tail of people I've worked with that, you get the call, hey, Brian, I'm looking for a job. And it's like, I'm not returning that call.
Every couple of years, right? Hey, I know we haven't talked in a while.
Yeah. So that, to me, this thing is like, think about the people you're working with. That's the key to success, and surround yourself with great people.
You bring up an interesting point, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but the whole notion of nurturing those relationships over time, and that concept of your network is your net worth, and not just calling people when you need something. Just quick thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Just popped into my head based on what you just said.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm very good at maintaining my network, right? It's one of the areas that's tough for me. As a sales executive and a COO, like I'm an introvert naturally, right? And so that networking, social outreach, and stuff has always been really hard for me, right? And so, I'm then therefore intentional on trying to figure out the ones that really matter, right? The ones that I,
Mm-hmm.
not just self-serving, but like the people I also had fun with, right? That I still want to
Yeah.
keep in touch with, right? Dave Phillips, my first boss at Oracle, right? We still run into each other, we still touch base, from time to time, and so to me, it's not easy, but it's critical, right? And if it's not easy for you, make sure you think about who are the ones that have had the most impact, and you want to participate in their success and understand, learn from them. Those are the ones that I try the hardest to keep in touch with, right? But it's a gift, right? Some people can be really good at networking and always find the time to stay in touch with everybody. It's really critical. It's hard to do. But when I feel like the ones that have mattered, I still could pick up a phone and it'd be just like we were working together yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a gift, right? And a blessing.
Yeah.
Look, learned a ton. Really enjoyed this conversation. I loved the way you connected coaching with the attrition and the scale and the success of the company. The importance of investing yourself. I love the quote: "If you're not going to invest in yourself, why should I invest in you?" Learning from failure, the role of mentors, and the importance of surrounding yourself with great people, with people who lift you up and make you want to reach higher and higher. So a lot of great nuggets in the conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure a lot of other people have taken a lot and will take a lot from this. If they wanted to get in touch with you because it sounds like TeamSnap's a great company, or hey, I remember working with Brian and he's had an impact on me. How can people get in touch with you these days?
Yeah, it's simple. My email is brian.caulfield at teamsnap.com. Happy to re-engage or offer any nuggets of wisdom that I can to folks. We are always hiring. We're rapidly growing. So, and I feel like we've got a really good environment for young sales people that want to get into the SaaS world. It's a fun space. So, we've always have jobs posted, reach out through LinkedIn, whatever it takes. It's always looking for good people to join the family.
Looking for good people to join the family. We'll leave it right there. Thank you, Brian. Really enjoyed the conversation today.
Thank you, Matt. Great catching up. Really appreciate your time.
And thanks to all of you out there for listening. If you learned something today, you laughed, you enjoyed the show, tell someone about this podcast, Coach2Scale. Again, Brian, thank you. And it's been my pleasure to host this conversation on behalf of Coach2Scale. Until next time, coach them if you want to keep them. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale, How Modern Leaders Build Coaching Cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at coachem.io. That's COACHEM.io. And follow us on Twitter at CoachemNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.